Obviously, the HBO reboot is pitched as a more accurate version of the Harry Potter books, the version of the story that we get in writing. So we're expecting plot points that were missed from the films, like Voldemort's full backstory, the plotline with Winky, and so much more. But there are some things that the films got right. The music, for example, and the look of Hogwarts. So I want to know, will the TV show keep those things, or will they change them? Because the thing is, those parts are so rooted in the identity of Harry Potter, but also the show is going to want its own identity. If it's too similar to the films, people are just going to be like, what's the point of this? So let's dive into the things that the TV show is going to have to change from the films. So John Williams' music is iconic. And I mean, what else do you expect from the guy who did Jurassic Park, the Star Wars music, Indiana Jones? Like, the guy kills it every time, and Harry Potter is no different. Like, that Hedwig's theme is so intertwined with Harry Potter, and the idea of having one without the other is unthinkable. Which brings us to the issue, right? The show is going to want to have its own identity, to feel like its own thing, rather than just a rip-off of the film. But if the first time we see the logo, or the opening credits, we hear the same soundtrack that we got in the film, it's going to feel, well, not like its own thing at all. But can they afford to have their own music entirely? Like, what if they try and then people hate the new music? Like, they were sat on a goldmine with the score they already had, but then they drop it completely for something new, which just doesn't have the same impact at all. But look, maybe they can just hire John Williams again, right? The guy's a genius, he rarely misses, so if anybody can give them something new that still hits the same, it's him. While I have faith in John Williams to deliver again and again and again, the guy is 93, meaning the final season of this show, which is supposed to last 10 years in total, he's gonna be 103 years old. And though he's not officially retired as of now, he's like semi-retired, I expect him to be at the very least retired by the age of 103, which begs the question, who would try and fill his shoes? Like, even if they reuse his most iconic scores, I imagine at the very least they're gonna try and change them a bit, tweak them to give the show its own identity. And so if it's not John Williams, who's going to feel comfortable enough to tweak the work of the legend that is John Williams, and run the risk of potentially being known as the person who ruined John Williams' masterpieces? Because I genuinely feel like that's the middle ground they'll have to settle on, right? A new score entirely, with a totally new vibe and a totally new sound, is going to be far too jarring. Especially when they know people will be comparing it to the show and the film so intently, and we all know how the internet is. People love to find flaws and issues and things to complain about. So this, changing the score to something that might not be well received, could just be adding fuel to the fire. So I expect the show will take the iconic soundtrack, keep it mostly, but change it up a bit. So if budget isn't an issue, and I expect on this project it won't be, I would love to see somebody like Michael Giacchino work on it. He's done a bunch of Pixar films like Up, and The Incredibles, and Ratatouille. So like, we know he can do that childlike wonder and magic. But he also did the new Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, and my favorite show ever made, Lost. So we know he can also nail those darker and more mysterious moments too. Williams and Giacchino working together on the first few movies before Williams fully passes the torch as the show gets darker and more intense. I'm here for it. If there was an HBO reboot of my life, I would want them to make it so I discovered this sooner. This is Zebiotics pre-alcohol, and they're kind of like magic little potions. So Zebiotics pre-alcohol is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. So here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. And it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. And I have to say, it's been a game changer for me. The night of our engagement party, I made sure to drink pre-alcohol as my first drink of the evening, and honestly, I woke up the next morning feeling so much better than I expected. No rough morning that I usually get after a night like that. I was able to get right back to reading Harry Potter, working on my videos, staying productive. The last thing that I want is to lose a day feeling rough when I could be making a video like this one. And Zebiotics pre-alcohol has let me enjoy celebrating special occasions like our engagement party, while still keeping my routine going the next day. Just remember to make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Check out Zebiotics pre-alcohol using the link in my description. They are sponsoring today's video, and if, like Hagrid, you are partial to a fire whiskey or two, I genuinely think you'll love how this works. Hogwarts Castle already changed a fair bit through the movie. Like, the landscape around it changed, they moved some spires, added some bridges and courtyards and stuff. But the thing is, since the movie's finished, Hogwarts Castle has become its own iconic landmark. Like, the castle is at the Universal theme parks, you can see it on the studio tours. People know what Hogwarts looks like, and they are attached to it. That line that Harry says, "Hogwarts is my home," fans feel like that. So in usual circumstances, I feel like the castle would be a good thing that the show could change, to give it its own distinct feeling compared to the movies. If you want the show to feel darker, you could make the castle more gothic looking. If you want the show to feel more whimsical, you can make it a bit more like a fairy tale castle. But the problem is, people are too attached to it, and the castle and its image are too attached to revenue sources. And I'm sorry to say, I think for Warner Brothers, they quite like making money. So if they change the castle too much in the show, then they're gonna have some decisions to make. Like, changing the castle in the show means they might have to change the castle at the theme parks and the studio tour, which will cost millions in renovations and potentially alienate fans of the movies who don't feel as attached to the show. Maybe people who grew up watching the films but feel like they're too old to watch the show or too busy. On the flip side, they could not change the castle at the theme parks and the studio tour, and then the new generation of fans, whose first introduction to Harry Potter is the show, well, they're not going to be interested in this movie castle that they don't recognize. They'll turn up to Harry Potter World in Universal and think, that's not Hogwarts, what's going on here? Or the other option for Warner Brothers and Universal, they end up having to double down and have a movie Harry Potter Land and a movie Harry Potter Studio Tour and a TV show Harry Potter Land in the theme parks and a TV show Harry Potter Studio Tour, each with their own castle. And that just feels like too much. So I think, from a purely financial perspective, they're gonna have to make Hogwarts look, on the outside at least, largely the same. The plus side of that is they can repeat filming locations, right? Alnwick Castle, Durham Cathedral. But then we run into the same issues with the music. If it's not different enough, people will just compare them more and more. It stops being a brand new retelling on its own merit, and it starts to feel like a knockoff, like a try-hard copycat. The same music in the same setting, but with different actors. It's gonna start feeling like Uncanny Valley. Now, costumes is somewhere that I think the new show can have some fun and really put its stamp on things. Especially because the many directors of the films took the costumes in their own directions, based on the vibe and the feel they were going for in their own installments. Now, in the books, the students pretty much always wear their robes over their shirt and ties, with pointed wizard hats being worn pretty much all the time during school hours, because it's part of their uniform, right? But in the movies, they cut back on these a lot. Like in the first few, it was robes and uniform, and then we just gradually moved more and more towards just typical school uniforms that we're used to seeing in like real life, with like jumpers and like the sweater vests and the ties, without the intricate robes, no hats. And I'm gonna be honest, on rewatches now, I feel like it loses its magic as it moves more and more towards real life costumes. The teachers, on the other hand, saw a bit of flamboyancy and flair in their costumes at least, though they were a little close to like regular people clothes for my liking. Like, remember, in the books, wizards don't know how to blend in with muggles. We see it in the Goblet of Fire at the Quidditch World Cup. They're told to dress like muggles and they just don't know how. And we see it in the very first scene of the Philosopher's Stone, right? Vernon is taken aback by how eccentric all the clothes are on all of the weird people he sees around town. They're wearing oddly coloured robes. And through the series, Dumbledore in particular is supposed to wear robes that are covered in fancy patterns. You know, purple robes with yellow stars, high-heeled boots sometimes. He wears a plum velvet suit. But Dumbledore in the films, particularly Michael Gambon, was just put in grey robes. Like, how boring. So I think the TV show can have some real fun with the costumes, and I think that they will. Like, this will help distinguish Lithgow's Dumbledore from Harris and Gambon's Dumbledore with really eccentric wardrobe options. And I expect us to get the scene of Vernon going about his day after the Potters died, constantly being flabbergasted by all of the strange outfits and peculiar behaviour that he sees. And what better way to convey that than visually with bright and unusual wardrobe choices? We can see how strange Vernon finds it with a couple of short glances and no need for dialogue. It'll be very show don't tell. And if you've watched any of my videos about the movies, you'll know I don't think they did show don't tell quite often enough. And so in the show, when it comes to the students, they could be given an eclectic range of uniform options. Like, I don't imagine they'll be made to wear pointed hats constantly. I imagine that would be a nightmare to shoot and to organise, to act in. But the films had many students wearing hoodies and jeans, which are muggle clothes, in their downtime. And these are supposed to be the students that will grow into the adult wizards who don't know how to dress like muggles. So having jeans and hoodies normalised is a wild choice. So I really think the TV show will and should go all out with costume, making it feel very different from the films. It can let them put their own stamp on the show visually, as well as give them a new revenue source to sell all of the replicas. And like I say, I think revenue sources might be quite important to them. So wands, broomsticks, the Marauder's map, the invisibility cloak. Harry Potter is rich with magical artifacts and props, and we're all used to how they look in the films, right? The wands have to kind of look like sticks. I mean, after all, they are primarily described by the wood type used, right? And the lengths are specified. They can obviously change up some of the details, give them more distinguished features like handles and details and maybe shapes and rune carvings. Or they might go the other way and make them look more natural, like actual sticks off a tree with mini branches coming off of them. Or they can make them more artificial and man-made by polishing them and adding little extra artifacts to them. This, by the way, I went to an event and this chap who makes wands made this. He gave the people at the event like a completely unique wand that he'd crafted. Like no other wand in the world exists like this. I'm obsessed with it. So the wands have a little bit of guidance with the wood type and the size, but broomsticks and the Marauder's map and the invisibility cloak, they can go all out with these. They can really make them their own. Like I imagine the broomsticks, in the films they had to be quite simple, right? Because of the green screen technology in the Quidditch scenes. Like it's much harder to key out the green around more complex, intricate shapes. But now there's new technology available, right? Like shows like The Mandalorian use giant video screens to create actual backdrops that are there in real time while you shoot, meaning no need for a green screen. And also less time needed in post-production. I feel like a technology like this could really refine the production process and allow for more complex Quidditch sequences and give us the opportunity to have really interesting looking broomsticks. Like in the books, there are broomsticks that have built-in alarm systems. There are Quidditch brooms, there are racing brooms, there are brooms that are just for transport more than playing sports. The prop makers can really play around with how different they want to make these. And the Marauder's map still needs to be, at its core, a piece of parchment, but in the books, it seems like it's just a single piece of parchment, whereas in the film, it's intricately folded with lots of sections. There are flaps and extra openings, and there are a few details that the movie changed as well. It shows people by their footprints, whereas in the books, it just shows them as a dot. In the books, speech bubbles would pop up, sharing passwords to secret passageways. Like, it's not drastically different, but the TV show can change up the aesthetics. The slightly red ink they used on the map in the films, they could change the style, they could change the intricacy. Same with the invisibility cloak, right? At its core, it needs to be invisible, obviously, so that's not going to look much like anything. But the cloak is just a cloak until it's worn and goes invisible. And in the films, that cloak kind of looked like the kind of curtains your grandma might have. So the show can tweak that design a little. And whereas in the films, they didn't know much about the cloak when they first started shooting, they now know that that cloak is a Deathly Hallow, and they can hint at that from the beginning. There can be like subtle nods to it somehow. A little hidden Hallow symbol on the cloak. It might be too on the nose, but something, you know? Personally, I'd like to see all of these things given their own definitive new look. I want wands to be more visually dynamic. I'd like broomsticks to have a bit more going on. Perhaps make them look customizable somehow. On the macro, I don't know if the show can afford to make huge changes to the things like the music or the castle, but on the micro, the costumes and the props, that can really give the show its own distinguished look. And I think that's going to be key to giving this reboot its own identity, rather than having people constantly comparing it to the films. And if you like hearing me talk about magical items from the Harry Potter world, in this video I ranked them all based on how cool I think they are, how much I like them, which one I would want if I could pick. So you might want to watch that video next.